I never thought I'd have a reason to remember the weekend I spent at my best friend's house as anything more than a blur of video games and leftover pizza. But that was before I knew his older brother would be home from college, before I knew I'd end up sharing a bed with him, before everything changed. It was supposed to be just another chill weekend. I'd been swamped with work and needed a break. My best friend Liam lived 2 towns over with his family, and he'd invited me to come crash for a couple of nights. It'll be low-key, he promised. We'll do nothing. It'll be great. And that's exactly what I needed. Nothing. So I packed a bag and drove over a Friday night after class. The second I stepped into their house, I got hit with that warm, lived-in scent, laundry detergent, faint cinnamon from a candle in the kitchen, and something like old wood and memories. It felt weirdly safe. Liam's parents were out of town. His older brother Drew was back for spring break, which I hadn't realized until I was already halfway through the front door. "Oh, hey," Drew said, looking up from the couch where he sat, barefoot in joggers and a faded hoodie. He had a bowl of cereal in one hand and his phone in the other. "Long time no see." I tried to act cool, like my pulse didn't just trip over itself. "Yeah, been a minute," I said, throwing him a casual nod. Drew was different. He'd always been handsome in that effortless, low-maintenance kind of way, but college had filled him out. His jaw was sharper, his voice a little deeper, and there was this calm confidence in the way he carried himself that hadn't been there before. Liam barely noticed any of it. "Yo, let's set up Mario Kart," he said, dragging me to the basement like we were still in high school. We spent most of the evening gaming, joking around, passing snacks back and forth. Drew came down after a while and joined us, flopping onto the carpet with a second bowl of cereal like it was the only thing he ever ate. It should have been like any other weekend, but there were these tiny things, like the way Drew would glance at me, even when I wasn't talking, or how our knees would bump when we sat close. Once he laughed at something I said, just a stupid one-liner, and I swear I felt it in my chest. By the time Liam fell asleep on the couch, head tilted back, mouth slightly open, Drew and I were the only ones still awake. We were both leaning back against the wall, watching some dumb action movie that neither of us had picked. "Liam's out," I said. "Yeah," Drew replied, his voice quieter now. "He always crashes early." We sat in silence for a moment. I could feel the heat of his leg next to mine. The soft flicker of the TV lit up the edge of his jaw. I should have gone upstairs. I should have grabbed a blanket and passed out on the floor, or the guest bed, or anywhere else. But instead, Drew stretched, looked over at me and said, "You can take my room if you want. Bed's more comfortable than the couch." I blinked. "Where are you gonna sleep?" He shrugged. "I'll crash in there too. Plenty of space." My brain stalled. "Oh, yeah, sure, if you're cool with that." He smiled, soft and unreadable. "Totally." So we went upstairs. Walked into his room. It was cleaner than I expected. Minimalist, with a few posters on the wall, a desk with a laptop and sketch pads, a single large bed in the corner. He tossed me a t-shirt to sleep in. "Probably comfier than whatever you packed." I muttered a thanks and stepped into the bathroom to change, heart pounding. When I came back, Drew was already under the blanket, lying on his side, scrolling his phone. He looked up when I entered, then set the phone down and flipped onto his back. "You good?" "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." I slid under the covers, trying to keep to my side of the bed. The lights were already off. The room was still. But I couldn't sleep. Not when I could feel the warmth of his body so close to mine. Not when the silence was charged in that specific way, like something unspoken was hanging in the air. I turned onto my side, facing away from him. I could feel him shift behind me. Closer. Closer. Then I felt it. His hand gently brushing my hip. I froze. He didn't pull away. I whispered, "Drew?" He didn't say anything at first. Then, quietly, Yeah. What are you doing? Another pause. Trying to decide if this is a terrible idea. I turned around slowly. His face was close, eyes searching mine in the dark. Neither of us said anything for a long second. Then he leaned in, and everything I thought I knew about that weekend changed. I don't know if I moved toward him or if he closed the gap first. It just happened. His lips brushed mine, barely touching, like he was testing something. My chest was so tight I thought I might forget to breathe. When he didn't pull away, I kissed him back. Tentatively at first, then with more certainty as his hand found the small of my back beneath the blanket. His lips were warm, his breath soft against my cheek. And suddenly, all those glances, all those tiny moments I'd been trying to explain away, they made sense. Every time he'd looked at me too long. Every time I'd wondered if I was imagining things. I wasn't. Eventually, we pulled apart, both of us lying there, faces inches away, not saying a word. I whispered, "What are we doing?" Drew let out a breath that sounded like a laugh, but not a funny one, more like he was relieved and scared at the same time. "I don't know," he said. "I didn't plan this. I didn't even think I'd see you this weekend. But when I did, when you walked through the door," he stopped himself. I just kept thinking about all the times I should have said something before. I stared at him, my heart thudding. "Does Liam know?" I asked. He shook his head. "God, no. And I'm not trying to make this weird for you. If you want to pretend it didn't happen, I get it. But I didn't want to pretend. I didn't want to pull away. Instead, I reached out and slid my fingers into his. He looked down at our hands for a moment, like he couldn't believe it either, then gave mine a gentle squeeze. We didn't do anything more that night. We just lay there, close, our hands tangled beneath the covers. I could hear the quiet rhythm of his breathing and feel the warmth of his body next to mine. At some point, I must have fallen asleep, because when I woke up, morning light was seeping through the blinds, and Drew was still there, still lying beside me, still holding my hand. For a few seconds, I just watched him sleep. He looked different with his guard down. Softer, younger, like the confident older brother I'd always known was only part of who he really was. Eventually, he stirred, blinking at the ceiling before turning his head toward me. "Hey," he said, voice rough with sleep. "Hey," I whispered back. A tiny, tired smile crept across his face. "Guess we're doing this." I didn't answer, I just nodded. We lay there for another minute before he reluctantly sat up. Liam's probably still passed out, but if he sees both of us up here, he's gonna have questions. He grabbed a hoodie off the chair and headed for the door. Just before slipping out, he turned back. I meant what I said, by the way. Last night, that wasn't nothing. Then he disappeared down the hall. I sat there in his bed, staring at the door he'd just walked through, feeling a weird mix of nerves and hope stirring in my stomach. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew it was more than nothing. The rest of the morning was weird in a way that felt impossible to explain. Liam eventually wandered downstairs in his usual weekend haze, rubbing sleep from his eyes and mumbling something about needing coffee before functioning. Drew was already in the kitchen when I came down, standing at the stove flipping pancakes like he hadn't just kissed me 6 hours earlier. "Yo!" Liam grunted, grabbing a mug. "You sleep okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. Couch sucked though. I crashed in Drew's room after a while." Liam didn't even blink. "Fair. His bed's like a damn hotel mattress." I caught Drew's eye for a split second as he turned toward the table with a plate of pancakes. He gave me a tiny smile, just a flicker, and I felt my chest go tight again. The rest of the morning passed like nothing had happened. We ate, watched TV, talked shit about the movie from last night. Drew kept his distance just enough, not too far to seem cold, not too close to raise questions. But I caught him looking at me once or twice when Liam wasn't paying attention. Later that afternoon, Liam and I went to the store to restock snacks. It was a quick trip, uneventful, until we were loading the bags into the trunk and he suddenly asked, "You and Drew get along okay last night?" I looked at him too fast. "Yeah. Why?" He shrugged. "I don't know. He's been acting kind of different. Not in a bad way, just not his usual sarcastic self." I forced a laugh. "Maybe college matured him or something." Liam squinted at me. "Maybe." We drove back in silence. I couldn't stop thinking about what Liam would say if he knew. If he had any idea. Not that there was even anything to tell yet. I didn't know what Drew wanted, or what I wanted, or whether this was a one-time thing we'd both just pretend never happened. But later that night, Drew made it clear it wasn't. Liam fell asleep early again, this time passed out with a bowl of popcorn on his chest. I was heading upstairs to plug in my phone when I noticed Drew's door cracked open. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, scrolling aimlessly on his phone. He looked up when he saw me. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. I stepped in and shut the door behind me. Drew stood and rubbed the back of his neck, looking nervous in a way I'd never seen before. "Last night wasn't a mistake," he said. "I don't want it to be." I nodded slowly. "Me either." He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing a little. "I don't know where this is going. I'm not good at this kind of thing." But I meant what I said. "I've been thinking about you more than I should." I swallowed hard. "Since when?" He gave a soft laugh, then looked down at the floor. "Since you were a junior in high school, probably. I used to come home from college and wonder why I kept looking for excuses to hang out when you were around." My chest clenched. He stepped closer. "I didn't act on it back then because, well, obvious reasons. You were young. I wasn't even sure how I felt about guys. But now?" He met my eyes. "Now I know." I felt myself take a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. And then he kissed me again. It was different this time. Slower. More sure of itself. Like, he wasn't afraid anymore. I kissed him back, fingers curling into his shirt. And this time, I didn't want it to end. I don't remember how long we stood there kissing. Maybe a minute. Maybe 10. Time kind of stopped. All I could think about was the feel of Drew's hands on my back, the warmth of his body against mine, and how impossibly surreal it all felt. If someone had told me even 2 days ago that Drew would be the one pulling me closer in the quiet of his bedroom, I would have laughed. But it was real. He was real. Eventually he pulled back, just enough to rest his forehead against mine. "I don't want to hide this," he whispered. I nodded, but my stomach twisted. "Liam's gonna find out." Drew sighed, brushing his fingers lightly along my side. "I know. And I hate the idea of sneaking around like we're doing something wrong. But I also don't want to drop this on him without knowing where we stand." "We just started," I said, my voice low. "It's not even a thing yet." Drew nodded slowly. "But it could be." He wasn't asking for anything huge. Not labels, not promises, just possibility. A maybe. And I wanted that maybe more than I'd realized. "Okay," I said, "let's figure it out." That night, I didn't go back to the guest bed. I stayed with him. Nothing happened. Nothing more than soft kisses and whispered words, and one of the best nights of sleep I'd had in a long time. It was quiet and warm and easy in a way that surprised me. I woke up before him the next morning, sunlight spilling through the window, casting soft stripes across his bare shoulder. I just watched him sleep for a while, unsure how to hold all the feelings crowding my chest. He looked peaceful, like maybe something in him had been waiting for this too. Eventually he stirred and blinked over at me, a small smile forming. "Morning. Morning," I echoed. He stretched, muscles moving beneath his shirt, and then leaned over to press a kiss to my cheek like it was the most natural thing in the world. My skin buzzed where his lips had been. "Liam's still asleep," I murmured. "We've got time." We spent the morning quietly together. We made coffee, took turns in the bathroom, joked like nothing was different in front of Liam. But every brush of our fingers under the table, every shared glance when Liam turned away, told a different story. That afternoon, Liam dragged us both out for a walk to this nature trail behind their neighborhood. We hiked in a lazy loop, Liam talking about some new girl in his stats class, while Drew and I trailed behind. At one point, Drew fell back even more, letting Liam walk ahead. He brushed his hand against mine, quick, almost imperceptible. "I wish we could just tell him," he murmured. I glanced at him. "Yeah?" He nodded. "I don't want to keep looking over my shoulder every time I touch you." My chest tightened. "Let's give it one more day. I want to be sure we're both in this." Drew looked at me for a long second, then nodded. "Okay, one more day." That night, we all hung out in the living room again. Movies, popcorn, beers. Liam fell asleep halfway through the second movie, same as always. And the second he was out, Drew took my hand under the blanket, squeezing it gently. No words. Just that simple touch that said everything. It's weird how fast something can start to feel normal. By the next morning, being around Drew like this, waking up next to him, brushing shoulders in the kitchen, sharing quiet looks across the table, it didn't feel new anymore. It felt easy, comfortable, like something that had been waiting in the background for way too long, finally getting its chance. But underneath all that calm was this quiet current of dread. Because today was the day we'd decided to tell Liam. The three of us had plans to grab lunch at this burger place Liam liked. The kind of low-key Sunday thing we always did when I stayed over. But this time, every bite felt mechanical, every laugh a little too forced. I kept checking the time, like I was waiting for a countdown to something I wasn't sure how to handle. After we got back to the house, Liam went upstairs to change, and I turned to Drew. "You sure about this?" I asked. He met my eyes. "Are you?" That question made my stomach flip, but I didn't hesitate. "Yeah," I said. "I am." Liam came back down a few minutes later, stretching. "You heading out soon?" "Figured I'd hang for a little bit," I said. "But can we talk first?" His eyebrows raised. "You and me?" "No, me, you, and Drew." He looked between us, confused. Sure?" We sat in the living room. I took the chair across from him. Drew stayed beside me on the couch. Not touching, but close. And then I said it. "There's something going on between me and your brother." Liam blinked. "What do you mean?" Drew took a breath. "We've been spending time together." "Since when?" "Since this weekend," I said. "But it's not just random. We're figuring it out. And we didn't want to lie to you about it." Liam stared at us, mouth slightly open, like he wasn't sure whether to laugh or flip the coffee table. "You serious?" Drew nodded. "Yeah." The silence that followed was brutal. Finally, Liam let out a breath. Okay. I looked at him. "You're not mad?" "No, I'm just processing. I mean, it's not like either of you are strangers. It's just..." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Weird. Like, you've been my best friend forever, and he's my brother, and I never thought of you two together, but..." He paused, then narrowed his eyes. "Wait, is this why you always volunteered to help him with his school projects back in the day?" Drew snorted. "I'm the one who asked for help. Don't pin this on him." Liam shook his head and let out a dry laugh. "God, okay. Just don't make it awkward." "For me, I mean..." "We won't," I said quickly. "We didn't want to keep it from you." Liam sat back, arms crossed, and gave us both a look. "As long as you're not going to break his heart or whatever." "Or start dry humping in front of me." Drew made a face. "Jesus, Liam." Liam grinned. "Just saying." And that was it. Not dramatic, not explosive. Just awkward, slightly gross in a brotherly way. And somehow, kind of perfect. After Liam went upstairs to play something on his Xbox, Drew and I stepped out onto the back deck. The sun was setting, casting everything in a soft orange glow. He looked over at me. "That went better than I expected." I nodded. I think I just grew a second ulcer from the stress. He reached for my hand. Well, he said, smiling softly, at least you've got me to make it all worth it. And right then, standing there in the fading light with his fingers wrapped around mine, I believed him. I didn't end up going home that night. We didn't plan it, it just happened. Liam disappeared into his room with his headset on, shouting at teammates while Drew and I sat out on the deck, talking until the sky went dark. We talked about everything, his college classes, my work stress, the weird dreams I'd been having lately, even that time in high school when I had a dumb little crush on someone I never told him about. He laughed. Was it me? I rolled my eyes. You wish. But we both knew. Eventually it got too cold to sit outside, so we moved back inside and curled up on the couch. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of moment you wish you could bottle and keep. At some point, I must have nodded off. I woke up with my head against his shoulder and his arm around me, warm and solid. It felt safe, familiar, and, honestly, addictive. I should probably go, I murmured. You can stay, he said, half asleep. You're always welcome. That night, we fell asleep in his bed again. This time, wrapped around each other like we belonged there. And when I woke up the next morning to his hand resting on my chest, thumb absent-mindedly moving against my skin, I didn't feel panicked or confused. I felt steady. We didn't talk much that morning. Just made coffee, cooked a quiet breakfast together while Liam remained upstairs, probably still knocked out from gaming all night. Drew stood next to me at the stove, and when I leaned into him without thinking, he didn't pull away. He kissed my cheek, barely more than a brush of lips. I looked over at him and smiled. Then he said it. Would you want to see me again after this, like back at school? The question caught me off guard. Not because I didn't want to, but because I hadn't let myself think that far ahead. Yeah, I said slowly, I would. He smiled. Good, because I don't think I'm done figuring you out yet. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a promise. But it was real. We didn't know what we were, not yet. But we were something. That afternoon, I finally packed up and got ready to leave. Liam gave me his usual bro nod goodbye and a mumbled, "Don't be a stranger," which, for him, was as close to a blessing as I was going to get. But before I got in my car, Drew followed me outside. Text me when you get home, he asked. I nodded. Then he did something I wasn't expecting. He leaned in and kissed me. Soft, slow, without hesitation. In broad daylight, in front of the house. It wasn't showy, it wasn't performative. It was just us. He pulled back, eyes steady on mine. Drive safe. Yeah, I whispered. You too. And as I drove away, I kept replaying that moment. The kiss, the look in his eyes, the quiet certainty of it all. For the first time in a long time, I felt like something good was starting. The drive home felt different. Not just because I was leaving something behind, but because I wasn't sure what I was heading into. I couldn't stop thinking about the way Drew looked at me before I left, the way his voice softened when he said, "Text me." I did, of course. Literally as soon as I pulled into my apartment's parking lot, me made it back in one piece. Drew, good. I was worried. Drew, not like worried, just, me, yeah, I know. Drew, call me later. I called him later. And again, the next night. And the night after that. Before I knew it, we were texting daily, talking until midnight, sending memes and random thoughts and blurry selfies. He started telling me more about his life on campus, his group projects, his awful roommate, his late-night burrito runs. I told him about work, the deadlines, the weird clients, the hours spent staring at a screen until my eyes begged for mercy. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was ours. 2 weeks later, he drove down to visit me. Just like that. Texted me on a Thursday, "Mind if I crash at your place this weekend?" Like it was casual. Like we hadn't just crossed a major invisible line. But I said yes. Of course I said yes. He arrived Friday night looking like he hadn't slept all week. Baseball cap, hoodie, bags under his eyes. But the second he saw me, his whole face changed. "You look good," he said, dropping his bag inside the door. "You look tired," he smirked. Fair. We ordered pizza, watched Netflix, and this time, I didn't even pretend to offer the couch. He followed me to the bedroom without a word. And that night, something shifted. It wasn't just kissing anymore. It was more. The kind of more that feels careful and charged all at once. The kind where every button undone is a choice, not a demand. Where you stop to check each other's faces and everything feels heavier but also better. We didn't rush it. There were pauses. Laughter. A few awkward moments. But it felt right. And when we finally collapsed next to each other, sweaty and breathless, his arm draped across my chest. It wasn't just a hookup, it was something else entirely. In the dark, I whispered, "Still think this isn't a mistake?" He didn't even hesitate. Only regret is not doing it sooner. The rest of the weekend was quiet, in a way that felt strangely intimate. We didn't do anything big, just stayed in, made terrible frozen waffles, watched old episodes of The Office while tangled under a throw blanket on my couch. But it felt like the beginning of something. Not the wild, movie-type romance. Just something real. Sunday night came too fast. Drew's bag was by the door again, his hoodie half-zipped, that same tired look in his eyes from when he arrived. Except now it wasn't just exhaustion, it was hesitation. We stood there in my tiny entryway, neither of us saying what we wanted to say. "Guess I should hit the road," he mumbled. I nodded, heart sinking. Yeah, but neither of us moved. Finally, he reached out and pulled me into a hug. Not a quick goodbye kind of hug. A long, wordless one. The kind that says more than talking ever could. His fingers pressed lightly into my back like he didn't want to let go. When he finally pulled away, he looked me in the eye. "You know this doesn't change anything, right?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when I go back, I'm still thinking about you. I still want to figure this out. Even if we're not in the same city, I'm not about to ghost you." I swallowed hard. "You sure about that?" "Yeah," he said without flinching. "I'm not going to pretend this is casual just because it started with a weekend." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just kissed him. He left not long after. I stood at the window and watched his taillights disappear down the street, my chest tight in a way that was both aching and full. Over the next few weeks, everything just continued. We texted constantly, called each other late at night, visited when we could. It wasn't always easy. His classes, my job, but it was worth it. Because every time I saw his name light up my phone, every time I heard his voice in my ear, I felt that same quiet spark. One night, about 2 months in, I got a text from Liam. "Liam, you guys still being all weird and romantic or whatever." Me. Define weird. Liam like IDK. Acting like you're in a rom-com. Me. Maybe Liam disgusting. Me, thanks, bro. Liam, but also good for you. And that was it. The strangest, most Liam-esque seal of approval I could ever hope for. It's been a while since that first weekend. And no, it hasn't been perfect. We've had arguments, we've had distance, we've had moments where we weren't sure what the hell we were doing. But through it all, Drew's still there. Still sending me sleepy selfies at midnight. Still asking if I've eaten. Still calling me babe in the most annoyingly affectionate voice when he's trying to tease me. Still kissing me like he means it every time he walks through my door. We never made a big announcement. We didn't post about it. We just let it grow. Quiet, steady, real. And maybe that's the kind of love that lasts.